Welcome to this video of an after-action report and example of play for the game The War Europe 1939 to 1945. This report is for scenario number 2, Norway 1940. Disclaimer: my approach is not necessarily optimal. This is a solitaire play. The scenario-specific sequence of play does not mention strategic movement, but strategic movement was used. The French setup has a surface fleet, an infantry, and a limited logistical effort, LLE. As LLEs do not allow for amphibious assaults, the reason for the infantry unit is not totally clear to me. However, this will be addressed in an errata where the French will receive an RLE, allowing the infantry unit to amphibious assault. The German victory conditions require the occupation of 3 locations in Norway without a unit being eliminated, and these victory conditions may lead to different decisions in this one-turn scenario than one would make in the longer game. The area of operations is Denmark and Norway, along with the surrounding sea areas. First, the victory conditions require the Germans to occupy with the ground unit Oslo, Bergen, and Narvik without having any units eliminated. Any other result is an Allied victory. In Oslo, the Norwegians have a single 1-5 infantry unit. While placement is optional, when the Germans occupy Oslo, Norway is conquered and all Norwegian units are removed from the game. Thus, the placement of the Norwegian infantry unit in any hex other than Oslo is not effective. The British have a large force in Scapa Flow with a naval air component called an AC, an aircraft carrier called a CV, and 2 surface fleets, generally referred to as fleets, and a 2-7 modified infantry unit. In game turns, this is a breakdown unit. In Rosyth, a single fleet. In Portsmouth, a single fleet. The French have in Calais a single fleet and a 2-5 breakdown infantry unit. The Germans are allowed a flexible setup. A medium bomber, called an MDM, is based in the city of Wilhelmshaven. In the port of Kiel, the remainder of the German forces. 2 fleets, a 1-8 mechanized infantry unit, breakdown, a 2-5 infantry unit, a breakdown unit, a 1-5 infantry unit, a breakdown unit, a 1-5 parachute or airborne unit called a para, also a breakdown unit. A tactical air unit called a TAC is also based on the city, and a fighter based on the clear terrain. The Germans have an SLE, a strategic logistical effort, allowing full use of all units. The French have a single LLE that activates units within a 1 hex range. The British have a single RLE, regional logistical effort, which activates units within a 4 hex range, and is placed to activate the forces in Scapa Flow and Rosyth. The force in Portsmouth is too far to be activated by the RLE. The scenario begins with the German turn. The Germans begin with a declaration of war against Denmark, and Denmark surrenders. When the Germans declare war on Denmark, special rules apply. This allows the Germans to build air bases in Denmark, and the selected location is hex 0828 in the northwest. This hex is adjacent to both the Danish North Sea and the West Baltic Sea. Then air units based in Kiel were rebased to this location. The air base is placed, air units stage, attack in Kiel to the air base in Denmark, a para unit in Kiel to the air base in Denmark, the fighter in Kiel into the clear terrain on which the air base is placed, as the fighter may base on clear terrain. The MDA in Wilhelmshaven will stage to Kiel. The MDM is now adjacent to the West Baltic Sea when based in Kiel. Then German naval movement will begin. The German player announces a naval move from Kiel with the fleet and the 2 infantry units, a 1-5 and a 2-5. The force moves into the West Baltic Sea with the objective to amphibious assault Oslo. As the Germans have conquered Denmark, German naval forces may transit through the Copenhagen Straits. The Allies announce that they will attempt to intercept this naval mission when it reaches Oslo. Note, the Allies may not intercept the German force until it passes through the Copenhagen Straits. The Germans announce they have an invasion chit, which will be used for this naval mission. The evasion chit adds 4 to all interception die roll attempts against this mission. The German naval force moves and is placed adjacent to Oslo. The invasion chit is added to the stack as a visual aid. the British will attempt to intercept. The British intercepting force will consist of all naval units in Scapa Flow, a CV, NAC, and 2 fleets. The British force is 3 sea areas distance from the interception target, first through the Scottish North Sea, then through the North Danish Sea, and finally into the West Baltic Sea. The British will be able to intercept with a modified die roll of less than 1 or a natural 1. There are numerous die roll modifiers for this interception attempt, +1 for West Front Surprise, -1 for the presence of the CV-NAC in the intercepting force, +1 for the distance of 3 sea areas, +4 from the evasion ship, +1 for the presence of the TAC and MDN adjacent to the West Baltic Sea, and -1 as the Germans are transporting units for the amphibious assault. The net die roll modifier is a +5, and only a die roll of 1 will result in an interception. The die roll is 5, and the British naval force in Scapa Flow fails to intercept. The British fleets in Roth and Portsmouth do not attempt to intercept. The French fleet in Calais does not attempt to intercept. The German player moves on to declare all battles. One battle location is selected, and that is the amphibious assault on Oslo. The MDM in Kiel will provide OAS, offensive air support. The TAC based in northwest Denmark will also provide OAS, as the Germans have air superiority over Oslo. The para unit will jump into Oslo. The TAC unit moves to Oslo. The para unit moves to Oslo. The battle marker is placed on top of the stack. Combat is resolved. The defending unit in Oslo has a defense strength of 4. The 1 factor ground unit is trebled on defense to 3 with an additional factor from the city. The German player is attacking with a total of 4, 3 from the infantry units and 1 from the para unit. The air units may provide a maximum of 2 column shifts, although the MDM provides up to 2 and the TAC at most 1. Any surface fleets will provide an additional column shift through shore bombardment support. Die roll modifiers are -3 for nationality, a first-rate attacker against a third-rate defender, -1 for West Front Surprise, -1 for the para unit as a special modifier against Norwegians, Danish, and Belgium during a West Front Surprise turn. The base odds are 1-1, modified to 4-1, with a -5 to the die roll. Any die roll will have the Norwegians eliminated or retreating from Oslo. Thus, Norway is conquered, and all Norwegian units are removed. A bridgehead marker is placed, allowing up to 6 units to be stacked in Oslo. The ground units advance. The para unit lands. A conquest marker is placed in Norway. Then we move to the build phase, where air bases may be constructed. The Germans select a location in southwest Norway, hex 0628, which is adjacent to the Norwegian Sea, Danish North Sea, and West Baltic Sea. 1 air base is built. A 2nd air base is built. Air units will stage during strategic movement. Note, air units may undertake missions during each phase. The TAC and MDN will stage to the air bases in southwest Norway, while the fighter unit may rebase to the hex as it is clear terrain. German ground units will strap move. A 2-5 infantry unit in Oslo will strap move to Bergen. A naval strategic move will take place. The Germans declare a strap move using the fleet in Kiel that was not used for the amphibious assault. The naval unit will strap move and rebase from Kiel to Narvik, transporting the 1-8 mech unit. The British will attempt to intercept this mission in the North Danish Sea, which is 2 sea areas distance from the fleet in Scapa Flow. The German force moves to the North Danish Sea. The British interception attempt is against a German force of size 1, requiring a modified die roll of 5 or less to successfully intercept. The die roll modifiers are +1 for West Front Surprise, -1 for the intercepting force that has an undepleted CV-NAC, +1 for the presence of German TAC and MDM air units adjacent to the sea area, and -1 for the German transportation mission. The net die roll modifiers are 0, the die roll is 2, and the interception is successful. An interception marker is placed on the German force. The British force moves from Scapa Flow to the North Danish Sea. The Germans announce their intent to counter-intercept the British force in the North Danish Sea with the fleet in Kiel. Note, an interception attempt is not considered a naval mission, and the fleet is available to intercept even though it had previously undertaken a naval mission, the amphibious assault. The goal is to join the German force already in the North Danish Sea. The British force is size 3 and requires a modified die roll of 9 or less to intercept. The die roll modifiers are +1 for the British CV NAC in the force, -1 for the German TAC and MDM air units adjacent to the sea area, -2 for the German force being in a port adjacent to the sea area. When that die roll modifier is -2, the die roll is 2, modified to a 0, the interception succeeds. The British forces are marked with an interception marker. The German force moves to the sea area. Now the British player announces another interception attempt with the fleet in Ross against the combined German force in the North Danish Sea. The size of the force is now 2. The interception die roll modifiers are +1 for West Front Surprise, +1 for the German air units adjacent to the sea areas, -1 for the German transportation mission, and that die roll modifier +1. The die roll is 2, and the modified die roll is 3. Interception is successful, as success requires a modified die roll of 7 or less. Next, the British force in Portsmouth will attempt to intercept. The interception die roll modifiers net at +2 from a +1 for West Front Surprise, +1 for the distance of 3 areas, +1 for the German TAC and MDM air units adjacent to the sea area, and -1 for the German transportation mission. The die roll is a 5, which is modified to a 7, and the interception is successful. The French fleet in Calais will also attempt to intercept. The interception die roll modifiers net at +3, from a +1 for the nationality difference, +1 for the West Front Surprise, +1 for the distance of 3 areas, +1 for the German TAC and MDM air units adjacent to the sea area, and a -1 for the German transportation mission. The die roll is 8, which is modified to 11, and the German force is not bound by the French fleet. Why intercept and have more than 4 fleets? Given the presence of German air, the Allies assume that some damage will be inflicted on the fleet, and more fleets increase the staying power of the Allied force and potential to disrupt the German naval mission. Now we show the German forces joining the combat, first the fleet from Rosa, then the fleet from Portsmouth. Finally, the German air units based in southwest Norway intercepts, which is automatic. The fighter joins first, and while they are not able to attack the naval units, the fighters will contribute to any air-to-air combat. Then the German MDM, and lastly the German TAC. On to air-sea combat in the Danish North Sea. To summarize, the Germans have a fighter, a TAC, an MDM, 2 fleets, and are transporting a ground unit. The British have a NAC on a CV and 4 fleets. The first combat round begins with the German as a phasing player and the Allies, that is the British, as the non-phasing player. First, air-to-air combat, but the British decide not to sortie the NAC. As there is no air-to-air combat, a surprise die roll is made. The roll is 7, which is not 2 or less, thus the German air do not surprise the British force, and the British flak get to fire. 4 fleets fire flak with a die roll of 10 and will deplete 1 air unit. The Germans decide to deplete the TAC. Then air versus naval. The Germans have a full-strength MDM, first rate, and depleted TAC, 4th rate. So they remain first rate, and are the equivalent of 6 fleets versus the 4 British fleets. Odds of 3 to 2, with +1 die roll modifier for the presence of the British CV NAC. The die roll is a 1 modified to a 2, and the result is a DD2. The British deplete 2 surface fleets with damage die rolls of 6 for 5 damage and a 5 for 3 damage. As both sides have naval units, the combined naval-air combat occurs. The Germans have 8 fleet equivalents with the depleted TAC, and the British 4 fleet equivalents with 1 depleted, as the other depleted fleet cycles out of the battle. The final odds are 2 to 1, with a +2 die roll modifier, 1 for the British CV NAC and 1 for the German transportation mission. The die roll is a 4 modified to a 6, and the result is a DD. The British deplete a fleet with a die roll of 6 for a damage of 5. The British decide to withdraw. The unscathed British CV NAC and the fleet returns to their point of origin, Scapa Flow, while the 3 damaged British fleets return to shipyards, 1 in Glasgow, 1 in Newcastle, and 1 in Southampton. The German fleet from Kiel returns to Kiel. The air units return to base. The German naval strat move continues. With no other possible interceptions, the fleet and ground unit arrive in Narvik. Now for the Allied turn. To achieve victory, the Allies must either eliminate a German unit or take one of the locations. Perhaps a raid on one of the German fleets in port, or an amphibious assault. Either way, Chamberlain assures victory. The Allies' operations segment. The Allies announce an amphibious assault using a force base in Scapa Flow, moving through the Scottish North Sea, through the Norwegian Sea, and then to the Narvik off-map box. The Germans announce that they will attempt to intercept the British force in the Norwegian Sea. The British force moves to the Norwegian Sea. The Germans attempt their interception. The British force has 2 fleets and will be intercepted on a modified die roll of 7 or less. Using the fleet based in Kiel, the interception die roll modifiers are +1 for the British CV NAC, -1 for the German TAC and MDM adjacent to the sea area, -1 for the amphibious assault. The net die roll modifier is -1, the die roll is 2, modified to a 1, and the British are intercepted. The French fleet will attempt to counter-intercept with a net +5 die roll modifiers from a +1 for force differential, +1 for west front surprise, +2 for the distance of force sea areas, and a +1 for the German air units. The Germans have 1 fleet, and a modified die roll 5 or less is required to intercept. The die roll is a 2, modified to a 7, and the French miss. The German fleet in Narvik will also attempt to intercept, with a net minus die roll modifier, same as for the fleet in Kiel. The die roll is a 9, the modified die roll is an 8, and the Narvik base fleet misses. The German air units adjacent to the sea area automatically intercept the British. The British are marked with an interception marker. The German units move into the sea area. With no interception, combat ensues. So, to recap, the British have a CV, NAC, a fleet, and are transporting a ground unit. The Germans have a fighter, an MDM, a depleted TAC, and 1 fleet. Round 1 of combat begins with air-to-air. The NAC will not sortie. To see if the German air units surprise the British force, a die roll is made and it is 4, needing a 2 or less to surprise. The air units are spotted and the British fire flak. The flak die roll is 9, and with 2 fleets the result is an AD. The Germans deplete the MDM. Air-to-sea combat occurs with the British phasing player attacking the German air units. The force size is 2 for the British to 6 for the Germans. The nationality differential is -4 as the first-rate British face off against the fourth-rate German air units. Remember, both depleted air units are fourth-rate. The final odds are 1 to 2 with a -4 die roll modifier. The die roll is a 9, the modified die roll is a 5, and the result is an AD. The British will deplete the fleet, and the damage die roll is 5, resulting in 3 damage. The ground unit on the fleet is also depleted. Then on to air-to-air, air-to-naval combat. The British have 2 fleets, still first-rate, versus the German fleets at fourth-rate. The die roll modifiers are -4 for force differential, and +1 for the British transport, amphibious assault. The final odds are 1 to 4, and the die roll is 8, modified to a 5, and is an AD2. The British sink the fleet, the ground unit is eliminated, and the CV NAC are both depleted. The CV damage die roll is a 3 for 2 damage. The British withdraw, and the CV returning to a shipyard, and the NAC returning to its point of origin, Scapa Flow. The casualties at the end of the scenario are for the British. They have a ground unit eliminated, the NAC is depleted, the CV has 2 damage, and the 4 British fleets are damaged with damages of 3, 3, 5, and 5. The Germans have a depleted TAC, a depleted MDM. The Germans occupy Narvik, Bergen, and Oslo with ground units. The Germans achieve a victory. Final thoughts. The British were probably far more aggressive given the force differential and lack of British air support. Additionally, the Germans did not occupy Trondheim, given the forces available, but this would be considered an oversight in a campaign game. Additionally, the Germans may have provided more air support to cover the strategic movement. Epilogue. What might the Germans do differently to achieve victory without using strategic movement? For Oslo, they can amphibious assault with the 2-5 infantry unit, the 1-8 mech unit, the MDM air unit, and of course a fleet. However, a bad die roll may end up with a German unit being eliminated. For Bergen, they can paradrop directly into Bergen and achieve air superiority using attack. For Narvik, they can amphibious assault with a 1-5 infantry unit and of course the fleet, but here there is no air support, making this a much riskier invasion. At the end of the turn, the Germans would want to strap move an air unit into Narvik and leave the other in southern Norway. Note, in the longer game, you would want to also occupy Trondheim, as it has a beach allowing invasion and has a port. What might the Allies do differently? They can invade Narvik by transiting the Scottish North Sea into the Faroes and directly into the Narvik off-map box, avoiding the air units that might be placed along the coast of Norway, which makes the Germans have to spread out their units a little bit more. The War, Europe, 1939 to 1945, designed by Ernie Copley, published in 2012 by Compass Games. Thank you, and good night.